Woolly Bargains, a scary story for young people by Michael Anderson, with illustrations by Kelly MacDonald. Once upon a time, there lived a crafty old woolly spider in the depths of a picado bloom. His delicately spun web covered the entire opening of the yellow flower, leaving only a hole in the center. Extending back to the heart of the blossom, the web made a furry hallway that ended in the spider's parlor. Lining the spider's den was the precious fruit of the picado bush and the remains of many good meals. Not far away lived a rather large green grasshopper with powerful legs and, like other grasshoppers, a very keen mind. One bright fall morning, as the grasshopper was casually hopping through the meadow, he heard a coarse, low-pitched voice call his name. Who was that? He thought to himself, as he stopped and looked in the direction of the picado bush. It startled him when, again, the voice from deep in the beautiful flower said, "Yes, Mr. Grasshopper, you. Come over here. Don't worry. All I want to do is talk." When the grasshopper realized who it was that requested his company, a flash of fear raced through his trembling frame. His antennas started to nervously twitch as he shakily replied, "Please leave me alone, and don't talk to me. Please?" "Mr. Grasshopper, you needn't be scared of me, and if I make you nervous, then please come no closer." Thinking of others who, in search of the precious fruit, had fallen prey to the woolly gray spider, he began to shudder. "What do you want?" he said in the direction of the web-rimmed flower. "Speak quickly. I must be on my way." From the darkness of the shadowy corridor, the spider began to talk, for now he had a customer. In an almost friendly voice, he began, "Mr. Grasshopper, you are obviously an intelligent, cautious sort." With that, the grasshopper straightened up, nodded his head in agreement, and leaned closer. The old spider went on. "You know that I move very slowly and cannot go beyond the limits of this flower, and so I will not try, as I would another, to lure you into my web. However, I have within my parlor the precious fruit of the picado bush. Have you ever tasted of it?" "I've heard of it, but no, I've never tasted it," replied the grasshopper, speaking into the flower. "As you've probably been told, it is very delicious and exquisite to the taste. Mr. Grasshopper, if you are willing to deal with me, I should like to share with you this precious fruit." The grasshopper's thoughts were clouded with a mixture of fear and desire. On the one hand, he knew very well the intentions of his newfound woolly friend. After all, spiders of the bush feed not on the fruit, but on, you guessed it, grasshoppers. Oh, but the fruit! The stories of the fruit! He had tasted it 1,000 times in his mind. At last, the grasshopper leaned close to the flower, and with a voice that was quiet, only to be heard by the one in the darkness, he said, "I do not want to deal with you, but before I go, tell me what the bargain would have been." Out of the shadows of the bright yellow flower, the gray woolly spider calmly replied, "The favor I ask of you in return for the fruit is a simple one in which many like yourself have easily performed and eaten freely of the fruit. All I ask is that you go to the meadow and bring me back a blade of grass and place it within the edge of my web. In return, I will select the finest of the fruit from my parlor and place it outside the sticky rim of my weave. To ensure your safety while you're placing the grass within my web, I will remain in my parlor, and when I present the fruit, if you like, step back. That way, we are at no time in jeopardy of ourselves." "That foolish spider," he thought to himself. "A measly blade of grass in return for delicious fruit. Fewer legs and more brains, that's what he needs." At the bottom of the furry foyer, the crafty spider was patiently waiting when the grasshopper again addressed the yellow flower. As I said before, I must be on my way, but first I will go and fetch one blade of grass for you, that I may obtain a piece of the fruit." It took only moments and a couple of lofty springs for the grasshopper to retrieve a blade of grass from the meadow, and cautiously, quietly stepping close to the rim of the yellow flower, the grasshopper, squinting both eyes, looked deep into the spiraling blackness of the web. Seeing no sign of the woolly gray spider, he gently set the freshly cut blade of grass barely inside the edge of the web, being careful not to touch any of the sticky strands. Slowly backing away, he waited and watched, wondering if the woolly spider would keep his bargain. All of a sudden, the flower started to move, and the old spider, with a luscious piece of fruit neatly tucked in the crux of one of his woolly arms, clambered up the sticky staircase. Without a word, the spider placed the fruit just outside the edge of the web, then crept back again to the entrance of the dark shaft that led to his parlor. Before descending into the darkness, the spider stopped and looked directly at the grasshopper and said with a wink, "Taste the fruit, and we will do business again." With that, he dropped out of sight, and once more the flower lay still. The grasshopper hadn't even finished the fruit when he bounded off for another blade of grass. Returning and placing it as before within the rim of the web, the grasshopper again stepped back. "Mr. Spider," he called in a jaunty voice, "I brought you another piece of green grass." The fruit did taste superb, but somehow more important was the thrill of making the old spider climb up and down the web, and all for a paltry piece of grass. After 3 or 4 trips to the meadow, the spider's web had been completely lined 1 layer deep along the rim with blades of grass. The tired old spider kept his part of the bargain, lumbering up and down the furry hallway, carrying fruit as long as his partner brought the grass. The young grasshopper had had his fill of fruit. In fact, the last piece he had thrown aside, letting it spoil in the afternoon sun. All the while, he watched with great entertainment the slow-moving, woolly gray spider struggle out of the shadows with another load of fruit. After a few more trips, the web had become layered with blades of grass 2 or 3 deep. Now placing the grass within the web meant leaning way over the green-covered net and carefully dropping the blade of grass in place. As evening approached, the old spider moved slower and slower, while the young grasshopper, reminding his woolly friend of the bargain they had made, delighted in fetching blades of grass. The setting sun brilliantly illuminated the yellow flower as the grasshopper returned with the last blade of grass. Leaning over the blossom, he suddenly lost balance and reached down with his leg to catch himself. Slipping between the blades of grass, his foot touched the gray mesh which closed around it. As he tried to pull free, the whole flower moved and the sticky net seized the other foot. Trembling, he held motionless so as not to alert the spider of his dilemma. "Mr. Spider," he said with a quivering voice, "why did you want the blades of grass? I thank you just the same, but you needn't bring me any more fruit." From deep in the blackness, a fearfully familiar voice replied, "Thank you, Mr. Grasshopper, but I think I have the energy for one more trip," as the woolly gray leg appeared in the evening sun.